Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Wednesday, January 22nd, 2014. This week is the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and I have a very personal link to that decision because in 1973 I was a junior in high school. And I was very aware of what was going on. The very next summer after Roe v. Wade passed through the Supreme Court, a good friend's father forced her to have an abortion. And I don't know how much he forced her to. She wanted to go to college too. And maybe she used that as an excuse, I'm not sure. But I watched this unfold. I was in debate classes in high school. I was a Christian at the time, very much opposed to legalized abortion. And so, as I said, this is kind of personal. I have a lot of active memory about this time and what was going on, what it was like, what people were saying. And in high school, most people didn't really understand what the issues were in Roe v. Wade. All they knew was that it was about abortion. They didn't know the basis on which the court case was argued. And because I was in a debate class, I had to find out. And I wanted to, of course, argue on the pro-life side. But it was a debate class. You learn skills, and our teacher made us argue on the opposite side. So I learned the arguments, and it came down to an issue of privacy. Now, I find this a painful irony because of what is going on with privacy in our country now. The reason that the Supreme Court decided as they did on this issue was because they said that under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, they believed that there's a right to privacy, and that this right extended to a woman's decision to have an abortion. Now, I don't even think I really want to comment on that, but I want to just take a look at what is happening with privacy when it's convenient. And this just shows how there really is evil behind all of this, everything that's happening in our nation that harms us. When it's convenient, when a blood sacrifice is wanted, when eugenics people want to reduce certain populations, then they are willing to give us a right to privacy. When it's about, that's about killing another human being. But when it's about listening to our phone calls, knowing absolutely everything that's going on with us, then, the courts say, sure, that's lawful. Here from Reuters, U.S. judge says NSA phone surveillance is lawful. And this has become a big issue, the NSA, and I'm just going to go through, I'm tying most of these ideas together under the heading of abortion, because, just the contrast between, sure, you can have privacy to get an abortion, but we get to know everything about your phone calls and your conversations and your personal life and your web searches and on and on and on and on. From End the Lie, government retaining documents thought to detail unknown NSA programs. And I'm just throwing this in because I'm talking about the NSA, and I found this kind of interesting as I was looking at articles this morning, not directly related to my general topic, but related because of the NSA. And here's another one. Americans indifferent about destruction of the Fourth Amendment. Now, there are two different amendments cited here. Roe v. Wade cited due process under the 14th Amendment, And these other privacy issues fall under the Fourth Amendment. But, privacy is privacy, right? And if we have privacy under the 14th Amendment, then cool, we have privacy. And this is a Kurt Nimmo article just about people being. I think people are unaware. I think that once people get the idea of what's really going on, everybody has secrets that they would prefer to be left secret. Of course, the broad stroke brush here is, well, if we're not doing anything wrong, we don't care if somebody hears our conversations. But it depends on who's judging what's right and what's wrong. And of course, I think most people watching this video are familiar with those issues. And I wanted to talk about common law, and I'll see if this will refresh. This is a link, a website that I've used in other 99th Monkey Liberty News videos, bringing a greater degree of understanding to common law, natural law, and of course the title is Common Law, Natural Law, and Classic Liberalism. But for some reason, this website is unavailable, and I'm hoping that they're just updating it or something, and that it will become available again. So I will include the link, and there's tremendous information there of great value. But just the idea, and what is law? How can abortion be legal, but under privacy? But how can we not have the right to a private phone call or private email or private web search? These ideas are all rooted in law, and the more we all can learn about law and how some of these decisions that courts make govern us, do they extend to us under true law or do they not? We can all certainly stand to learn more about this. And from the von Mises Institute, The Ethics of Liberty, Natural Law versus Positive Law. And just some information here if you want to dive into this a little deeper. And here from 1215.org, The Essence of Common Law. And there's a lot of information on 1215.org. It's not organized in a way that makes it very easy to access. But if you can spend some time, it's there. There's tremendous information there, and you can gain a great degree of understanding. And here from Sherry Questioning All, McCain upset there was no war in Syria due to Obama wanting congressional approval, introduced a bill to allow a president to declare war without Congress approval. Now, this is an example of somebody saying that something is a law just because they say it's a law. And if Congress does this, this is unconstitutional. I mean, this law would nullify aspects of the Constitution and would nullify long precedent. And when there is statutory law, when Congress makes an edict like this, this is, they call it a law. The bill becomes a law when it's approved, right? But in the depth of common law, historical law, constitutional law, this exceeds the bounds. I mean, this is outside, and this is one of the great problems in our nation today. And this is really the point that I want to make and tie all this together, is that we need to be under the rule of law, and courts and legislative bodies have really just kind of been shooting from the hip and making whatever changes they make and finding a reason to found their decisions. Instead of a decision flowing out of a foundation of law. The decisions, they first decide what they want to decide, and then they go and look for a legal precedent for it and legal foundation for it. And that has done tremendous harm to our legal system. And I know I've had this link before in the video. Karen Hudes, U.S. has to come around to the rule of law. And there's a video here, and it's crucial. We either are under the rule of law, or we are completely dominated by oligarchs who, as I said, decide what they want to decide and then find a legal reason to back up their decision. Do you have something to add?
I sure do. Yes, don't confuse the rule of law with an abundance of laws. And what the abundance of laws is actually for is so that the oligarchs can do the selective enforcement game and enable their guys to stay in power. So, yeah, rule of law is not abundance of law. There's a great Frederick Bastiat quote that I can't remember, from his famous book of The Law, in which he talks about, mentions how an abundance of laws is basically the breeding ground of tyranny. So, yeah, very important distinction there. I wanted to make sure I got in.
And I'm actually glad you're here to cover this topic, because I mentioned this yesterday, and just under the idea of the rule of law and the deeper significance of common law as opposed to legislative or regulatory law. From Natural News, this article, Biotech giants sue Hawaiian Island for passing legislation to restrict GMOs. Even if there's a law that we want passed because it agrees with where we want the world to go, if the law is outside of the rule of law, outside of constitutional law, if a legislative body has outreached their boundaries, overstepped their boundaries in making the law, I would respect the courts for upholding, for saying that they can't make that law. Now, is it constitutional for a state to make a law banning a certain kind of product? Is that lawful?
Yeah, absolutely. That, of course, that can be done. I mean, anything that's harmful, the people that are in power can say that's not allowed here. That's exactly what's going on. So, yeah, it happens all the time. You pass a law against dumping toxic waste in the community river, and everybody recognizes that's valid. Well, this is the same thing. So I think what needs to happen here, where you have this overreach by the paid-off, bought-off judicial mechanism, you need to find a way for the people to actually nullify if any suit that they might win. Of course, they haven't won this. I'm not. I'm kind of thinking ahead of that game, but we, the people, need to find a way to get out in front of it and in control. And ultimately, that's nullification. That's what the 10th Amendment Center is all about.
So what they could do potentially is, if the courts were to say that this law, if the courts were not to uphold this law, then somebody could sue for harm from GMOs, and the jury would award the how would that work exactly?
Well, that's how it's tough, because this isn't nullifying a wrong law. This would be upholding a right law that the forces of tyranny are seeking to break down, or they're seeking to nullify a good law. So it's a different situation from normal, and it's tough because really the harms of GMOs are so extensive that it's hard to overestimate the negative impact, and it's hard to really impose a proper penalty. So, but when you have people that are behind the just law, then there's really nobody that can stand against it. So it really all boils down to education and people needing to understand. I think Hawaii does seem to have a lot of understanding about GMOs, and within the government there seem to be some knowledgeable legislators. So I hope that Hawaii can stand against this. I'm not sure what the mechanism it would be, except for people making their voices known and voting with their dollars, but also protesting whenever GMOs are attempting to be planted in any. I know there's GMO papayas, so that would be an important area to focus on in Hawaii.
There's some difficult struggles here, and in order to be effective, we need to understand how some of these law systems work. And I want to bring this back into the realm of abortion and just take a brief look at some of the history of common law context for life in the womb. And here from the examiner.com, civil suits for wrongful death of a fetus, now law in Virginia. And historically, there have been laws that if a pregnant woman was harmed and the child she was carrying was harmed, that there would be retribution for that.
Yeah, restitution, right? Or there would have to be a payment would have to be made.
In certain cases now, actually in the Old Testament, and this is from Old Testament law.
I'm just thinking restitution is punishment, but retribution is punishment,
yeah.
But restitution is payment of damages.
Well, there's actually both required. If men fight and hurt a woman with child so that she gives birth prematurely, yet no harm follows, he shall surely be punished accordingly as the woman's husband imposes on him. That would be restitution.
No,
and he shall pay as the judges determine. Now here's retribution.
Okay.
If any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe.
Well, I think the retribution part is probably superseded by the New Testament, and pretty much everybody understands that we no longer live under the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth law. So we would hope that there would be mercy there, but nevertheless, the damages are real, and there would have to be restitution made.
Well, I think the significant aspect of this is that there is a biblical recognition of the life of an unborn child.
Right.
That it is a life.
Right.
And that if that child were to lose its life because of, if men fight and hurt a woman with child. I mean, this was before automobiles and, huge machines and things of that nature that might do harm to a woman so that she would lose the child that she's carrying. This is the circumstances that were anticipated in the Old Testament, that men would be fighting and accidentally hurt a woman with child, and this isn't even intentional. I mean, this would be manslaughter, and there's required
right.
justice.
I mean, you're right. That's all through the scripture, that there is acknowledgement that the unborn child is a life, and there is legal protection of that life, and that's what Roe v. Wade overturned. And Roe v. Wade is it's an affront to natural law, which is what we're talking about here. This is natural law that has been abrogated, and we need to find our way back.
Sure. And ultimately, to put it in very simple terms, harm is done by an unborn child losing its life. If you do no harm, common law, natural law, there is definitely harm being done. So yeah, the Supreme Court effectively overturned the do no harm
Right.
to another human being. So there's no logical stopping point for that. So I think that's why it's significant. So that is everything on just the topic of Roe v. Wade, common law, and the privacy issues. Just because this was interesting, from another voice, Revelation 18:4. Detroit bankruptcy update. Emergency manager opens door for water privatization. And this is a hard example here of the banks and various entities claiming that they own American resources, and nasty precedent.
Very. I am convinced that these areas like Detroit that become hellholes of the state and the banks are experimental grounds for the next level of tyranny they want to take us. And we can't just ignore this and we say this is so wild it can't go past this point. No, I think this is very important and it needs to be stopped. And people need to understand that these are ultimately demonic forces that find agents and banks and tyrants and that want to control the very substance of life and life itself. So to claim that you own the water that's in the earth, this is somebody trying to play God, and worse than play God, they're actually in some measure doing it.
And the point of view of this article is that this is a move toward Agenda 21, but really the thought that it sparked in me was the idea of the American people having been basically sold into slavery in, I think it was 1933, when that bankruptcy process.
Yeah, the New Deal, where our labor became surety for the debt. That was the banksters refinancing everything, creating money out of nothing, and putting our labor as surety for that debt.
Yeah, so this is just a way to help people understand that we are being sold, and piece by piece, our nation, our people, we're being sold. Our country's being sold out from under us. And after all that, I thought that we needed some crazy good news. And this was the best news I could find. And this is pretty good news for me from Natural News Blogs. Gluten-free, crazy good pizza.
Okay.
So that's our good news for the day. And with that, hoping that you will obtain some grace for processing some of these ideas, and because they're complex and they're very significant, and it's crucial that we have an understanding, not necessarily of pizza, but of the weightier matters of the law. And thanks for joining us for today's 99th Monkey Liberty News. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, insist on liberty, and
live long and prosper.